Hello.
Hey, how you
I'm
doing?
good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you a Christian or a Bible believer?
I'm an agnostic,
Okay,
but I
all
just
right,
I had a question.
for sure.
Do you think? All right. So, do you disagree with the morals and ethics of the theoretical Christian God?
Quite a few of them, yes.
So then, my question to you would be: if you knew for a fact that Jesus was the Son of God and God was real, would you follow him though disagreeing with his morals because of his power?
So that's a great question. I like that. I would hope that I would still go with what I felt was right, regardless of how afraid I might feel or how valid I may feel the threat is against me. But if I were to look at it from the way that I would hope to, is that I would just want to get to know Jesus and know God a lot more to see if the Bible is an accurate representation of them. If it's not, I'm very curious to learn a lot more about them. If the Bible is an accurate representation of them, then no, because they've got some horrific stuff in there.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's one. That's like one of like the few things that's holding me back from being an actual Christian is like I just feel like I ethically and morally disagree with a lot of the things that God, not necessarily Jesus. I think Jesus's teachings I mostly agree with, but like God in the Old Testament was very immoral to me, and so that's kind of like stopping me from wanting to be a Christian.
What about in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 when Jesus actually validates the law of the Old Testament, which includes things like slavery, sex slavery, offing kids, and things like that?
Yeah, I disagree with like his references to the Old Testament. Yeah, but like the way he like if he lived a theoretical perfect life, I think the way that he lived as a person is an accurate moral representation of how like a perfect moral person would live based on how the Bible describes his life. But some of his like teachings of the Old Testament, I disagree with.
Well, the way he lived was he taught that law, and he said that that's what you ought to do. You
I,
ought to go. You ought to teach the law, and you teach others to do the same, which is what he was teaching others.
was so
So, I think that if you're to say that, oh, his references to the Old Testament is different than the way he lived his life, not if he was actually doing what he preached, because if he was doing what he preached, then he would be living by the old law, and we even see him. I believe it's Mark 7, scold the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious leaders, for not deleting the children that were disrespectful to their kids because he practiced what he taught. He said that this is what the law says, this is how we ought to act, and how dare you not follow it? How dare you not delete these children?
yeah, I agree.
So I think that even if you want to say that, if you want to try to separate Jesus from the God of the Old Testament, it doesn't work because Jesus very clearly stands with the God of the Old Testament and promotes that law still, and promotes it even until technically our time period. And so I reject that.
All right, yeah, I understand that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah. So Jesus definitely continues to promote the old law, the law of God. He never says. Actually, I would say he even gets a little more hardcore with it. We see him say things like, oh, you ought not, or the law says thou shalt not kill, but I tell you that even if you just hate someone in your heart, that you have already done that action to that person. So he, actually even makes things even a little bit more extreme with the law. He tends to actually bring it even to the point of thought crime, which I think is even more aggressive and cruel. But I hope everyone is having a wonderful Friday afternoon. I've got some food I'm cooking right now for the coworkers. Got to check on it in a little bit, but all right. Yeah, but we understand that the heart actually doesn't process emotions or thoughts or anything like that. That actually goes with your brain. All that stuff goes with your brain. So we understand that this is a thought crime. This is something that comes from the brain. Again, we say that metaphorically. It's a heart issue. It's metaphoric. It's not actually something to do with the heart organ in your chest. It doesn't need to be a sin of the flesh. The fact is that it was a sin. That's what Jesus was saying. That he was clarifying the sin. It doesn't have to be the actual act of the flesh. Thank you for the likes, not the real Dwight. It seems to have been kind of a slow day. Tried on a little bit earlier, didn't really see many people, but it's alright. If we don't really get anyone, then we'll just try again more. Yeah, wonder, that's literally what I just said. You can keep trying to make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I've literally said what you just typed out, so. Yeah, less people on than usual. That's okay, Wonder. You can keep thinking that. But I literally just said what you just typed out like 2, 3 times. So let's see, what time is it? Oh, it's 5:17. Okay, that's not too bad. We'll probably chill in here for another 15ish minutes or so. So until we're waiting for guests, I'll tell you, I guess, some things I've got planned for the future. I want to do a little bit more on YouTube, and get some videos up there if you would like. This is my YouTube. My other accounts, I have my backup TikTok, Atheist Preacher, and then I got my YouTube, The Atheistic Preacher, and that's the one I mostly want to grow. Hey, Biblical, how you doing? That's the one I mostly really want to grow. So if you guys could please follow my YouTube at The Atheistic Preacher, and then my Lemonade is associated with this, so it's the same thing. I post my lives on there, so if you guys missed any references or missed a part of the conversation, you can go back and always check again. So every time that biblical's cool. So every time that I talk with guests, so I'm not sure if I'm going to post these because it's mostly just me talking, but I had a revelation today. I just can't with Christians anymore. Yeah, sometimes they can be exhausting, let me tell you. Oh, man, I don't know how people do this for like 16 hours a day. It's crazy. But one of the things I want to do on YouTube is I want to start doing like commentary videos and reaction videos. So I'm reading through a couple books that I want to go through, discuss them, and talk about what's in them. I'm starting out with some smaller books for now, and then I'll gradually start getting to bigger and bigger books, more complex books, and then I also want to do like a video reactions, to different things, different stuff in religious news, different sermons, as well as some clips that I've been seeing, especially with Luke Beasley, this interviewing this crazy Christian couple. But hey, Biblical, how you doing?
What's up, my friend? How are you doing today?
Oh, you know what? Not too bad. I will be just fine until I have to go to work.
Oh, that sucks. I'm stuck at work right now for
Oh, that's
another
terrible.
40 minutes.
Oh, I have to leave in about 40 minutes.
Oh, that's the worst. So, I just can't with Christians anymore. I can't. I have given up. They won. I can't do it anymore.
What happened?
Okay, so you know how when you're having a discussion about like biblical prophecies as they relate to Jesus, and
Oh, yes, yes.
you always hear that number thrown around. He fulfilled 351 Old Testament prophecies. So for the longest time, I've had it in the back of my head I want to go through all of these prophecies and see, I figured some of them are going to be like, okay, that's not a prophecy, or you're taking this out of context, or something like that. But generally, I can see where they're coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went to one, and this is number 163 out of 351, because I actually got the list. I finally got my hands on the list.
Oh, you should send me the list.
I
I
would
want to
be
do my own biblical prophecy study too, so
I would be
I would
happy.
I'd be interested. Thank you.
I got you.
So you said this was 161. Which one's this one?
163. Now, out of all the prophetic books in the Bible that definitely have prophecy in them, what is the book that you would think out of every book in the Bible would have the least amount of prophecy in it? Just off the top of your head.
Hosea.
Exactly. The Song of Songs, Song of Solomon. The
Okay.
love letter between Solomon and some woman.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a spicy one.
Guys, I this is a prophecy that they count as a prophecy. Song of Songs 5:16. His mouth is sweet as drink, all of him delight. This is my lover, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. Somehow or another,
Oh, stop it.
this is a. I wish I was joking. I wish I was lying. This is one of the 351 prophecies that they point to say that Jesus fulfilled it. I
Why do
can't.
Christians have to make everything sexual?
I I I can't. I just can't anymore. How and the description for this prophecy is the altogether lovely one.
Okay. Do they not? This is how you know that they don't know what their book is about.
Another one, so just below that, because it's in order of books, is Isaiah 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, in this, they got four prophecies out of it. Isaiah chapter 6, for those who are unaware, and I know you know, atheist, um, is the call narrative of Isaiah. It's his call narrative. This is where he is pulled into the divine assembly and told his mission and purified before Adonai. Somehow, this has four prophecies about the Messiah. It's called the call narrative.
Oh my god.
Yet,
And they attribute that to four of the prophecies.
Isaiah 1 6, when Isaiah saw his glory, Isaiah 6 8, the one sent by God, 6 9 through 10, parables fall on deaf ears, 6 9 through 12, blinded to Christ and deaf to his words. They pulled four prophecies out of 12 verses.
And they don't think that's cherry picking. That's the most incredible part.
Isaiah 7:14 is two prophecies that he supposedly fulfilled: to be born of a virgin, to be called Emmanuel, God with us. But then they also go down to Isaiah 8:8 and consider him called Emmanuel another prophecy. I I knew I shouldn't have looked at this, and I made that mistake, and that's on me, really.
Are you
I
surprised?
Man, that
awoken.
sounds fun. Yeah,
So,
Awoken says that they know you.
Yeah, awoken's cool people.
Cool, cool. Well, welcome, Awoken.
thanks for
What
having
are
me.
your thoughts?
No, well, it's it's what they're trained to do. Um, like, I even have a template that I got mailed by a church that I live by. It says one of the things you should do is look for Jesus in the Old Testament because he's in there. Um, well, if you read it in context, it doesn't make sense to be talking about Jesus. Like, the only thing Jesus did was he rode a donkey. All right, that's one thing he did. But if you check everything else, like it's just the context doesn't line up.
What specific prophecies did they bring up in that document you're talking about?
Oh, well, no, he did. They didn't mention anything. They just it's an invitation to a church, and they just said one of the tips you should have for reading the Bible is to look for Jesus in the Old Testament. So I'm like, well, I see why they think that.
I have noticed that. I feel with especially lots of churches that I've gone and like visited and like listened to the sermons for, especially lots of like Christians that I talk to that don't really tend to know lots of the Old Testament, is it's because the churches, the religious leaders and stuff like that that lead them to Christ, or when they don't, or when they became Christians and stuff, recommend that they start in the New Testament, that they start in the Gospels, and then the Old Testament will make sense because they'll see Jesus everywhere. And I think that that's a neat little trick that they do
It really
to
is.
to make it so that if you're reading it for the first time, that the context does get all jumbled up because you were told a very specific way to read it, but if you read it, I believe, from start to finish, you would get a completely different picture.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It scares me that there's over 2 billion Christians in the world, and Christianity's been like the major religion for the past like 1,500 years or so. Um, and then I look at Judaism, I'm like, there's not that many Jews. I understand they're an ethnic religion, but I'm like, it's they're 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 being misdirected in their church. Um, they don't have the time and the effort to read the Bible, and they just listen to what their preachers tell them.
That is scary. And what's even scarier is I used to be that way.
I mean, I was that way too, but um, you know, I didn't get too far indoctrinated, so I had the opportunity to break away early in my teenage years.
Well, that's good.
But I don't know what I would have done if I was more involved with the church. I may be a Christian today.
I think like this, one of the scariest things to think about, like those kind of, what ifs, and my life could have looked a whole different way thing, is like looking back on the way that like I was raised and the ways that I believed. While my family didn't associate with a specific like church or denomination per se, a lot of our teachings came from a very like small denomination that I did more research on now later and realized it fits in a lot with more like IFB, new IFB type of doctrines. And like if you listen to those people's sermons, like it is scary. The things that they say, the things that they want the world to look like and stuff, and how energetic the congregation is in response to the pastor leading it. Talking about how the government should delete certain kinds of people, talking about how women that have abortion should be deleted, and like all these different things, and preaching this with such quote unquote passion from the pulpit, talking about how they use spousal discipline and how that's perfectly fine and biblical, and how whipping your children is biblical and stuff like that, and all this stuff. And then the church responds with support and applause and things like that. And I think it's just a whole terrifying thing to know that I my views did once align like that. Now they don't, and now I'm looking at that from the outside and going like, wow, that's just crazy. And I think that I think the cult like mentality between the pastor and a congregation, especially when it's small like that, can be really quite terrifying with how people just aren't aware of it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the people in the churches are not equipped because I don't know. I think it's a more of a patriarchy thing. Like, oh, you better not challenge the full grown white man who's yelling at the top of his lungs. Like, You better not challenge him because he knows what he's talking about and you don't. It's fear. I know Christianity's BS. All right, he's not in the Old Testament. The gospel writers misquoted everything, and so the New Testament is debunked. But unfortunately, people don't. Part of the problem is they are reading mistranslated Bibles. That's one problem. Um, the second problem is they're just not open-minded enough to think, well, maybe could my religion be wrong, right? I think that's the other problem.
Well,
Yeah,
because they're taught not to entertain those thoughts. It's
yeah,
you're free to ask questions and have doubts, but not to that
yeah,
degree.
yeah.
You can't ask those questions. And then it gets to they bring up those passages like Job and stuff like that where God is like, all right, like I humored you enough, but like who are you to ask me what look at all I've done. I built the galaxy, I made this, I made that. Like you don't even know anything, so
Right.
just pretty much shut up and go along for the ride.
Hey guys, I gotta run. My shift relief is here, so I will talk to y'all later. Love y'all.
See, biblical.
All right, thanks for hopping on. Yeah, I like biblical. He's cool.
Yeah, he's very smart.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I hope he sends me that list. I know that it's exhausting, but I would like to do my own like messianic prophecy study with how much Jesus fulfilled and why people think that he fulfilled as much as he did and how that isn't the case at all.
Well, that's actually my specialty.
Oh, fantastic! Great.
Um,
I'll give you a follow. We can definitely talk on that more in the future because I would like to go deeper into that.
yeah. I don't know if you're tied up now, but
I'll be getting off in about 5 minutes. I have to get to work
okay.
within the next 45-ish minutes or so. But
Yeah. So, the one thing I will give him, he did ride the correct animal into Jerusalem, um, as recorded in John, Mark, and Luke. He rode the donkey. Like that's one thing the Messiah does, and Jesus
but
did
isn't
that.
that like partial of a prophecy? Like, isn't that like a third of a prophecy?
So the idea is, well, he fulfilled Zechariah 9 verse 9, but Zechariah 9 verse 10 was not fulfilled. But the argument is, well, he'll come back in the second coming to fulfill the rest of the prophecy to bring world peace.
Ah,
But you got to squeeze in a second coming in between those two little verses. Um, and the Hebrew actually says he's riding a donkey, and I, meaning God, will cut off the chariots from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, meaning bringing world peace. So it's all one continuous passage anyway. But the Christians want to say, well, it's a partial fulfillment because they want to leave room for the second coming so Jesus can fulfill the rest of the prophecy. But it's like,
yeah,
why didn't you mention any, why didn't Zechariah mention it? That's the problem. So,
yeah. It also brings the whole question of, well, then Jesus didn't fulfill all the prophecies, like and they want to say that it's all fulfilled, but it isn't clearly.
right. And the key point for me is the book of Daniel, um, which I do not believe could possibly be talking about Jesus returning. Because if you know about the book of Daniel, it deals with the Maccabees and Antiochus Epiphanes. So
Yeah,
but that prophecy ended in the second century BCE. So the problem here is Jesus has to fulfill a prophecy that had to happen 200 years before he was born. So it's like, well, it's it to me that's like the ultimate checkmate. Like he can't fulfill it if it's already passed, right? Like he's supposed to receive a kingdom, but the passage in Daniel says this Son of Man figure receives his kingdom, but when he receives his kingdom is the key. It's at the fall of Antiochus IV and the destruction of the Greek Empire. So you see what they did. So the New Testament writers just had to reinterpret Daniel to be about Rome. And so Rome is the final beast, the final kingdom, the final foreign power before God establishes his messianic kingdom. So they just reinterpreted Daniel. But
I see. Is that the most common response that you get back to that when you bring up that point that no, it's actually Rome?
yes. They say that the fourth beast is Rome, so they could have the prophecy be about 70 AD, destruction of the temple by the Romans.
I see. Well, definitely want to talk to you more. I sent you a follow.
Okay.
I'll be on it again tomorrow. So
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
on at some point tomorrow,
Appreciate it.
feel free to check in.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Take care, bud.
Take care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. Well, that was cool.